Hello, welcome to this Three Stories of Innovation. I will be sharing my screen just shortly, so bear with me as I pull that up.
If it's not working, I'd be happy to share as well.
Can you see that?
Woo, we got it.
Okay. Welcome to this Three Stories of Innovation, the survivor, the hustler, the engineer. These are all currently students from the University of San Diego, and they participated in different social innovation challenges where students are called to create innovations and solutions related to UN Sustainable Development Goals, such as the Fowler Global Social Innovation Challenge and the Fowler Business Concept Challenge. These students tapped into their identity and connected themselves to a larger community that is experiencing hardship, a lack of access, or a gap in resources to work towards a solution. And through that hard work, they became CEOs of their own companies that are making an impact today. I'm excited for you to hear from these students turned CEOs and how you can do similar work in your life. First speaker, I want to introduce Brittany Cattenkirk. She is a graduate of the USD's Graduate School of Peace and Justice, and she's getting a master's in social innovation. She's a creator of Sunlight U and Sunlight Retreat. For our first talk, I do want to give a trigger warning because she does focus on themes of sexual violence and how she took that, what was lacking in her healing journey, to help other survivors overcome their trauma. I give a warm welcome to you, Brittany.
Thank you so much, Chelsea. I want to share a little bit about my story. A man raped me in 2012 overseas, and I really struggled in my healing process. I gained 60 pounds. I struggled to lose the house. I had suicidal ideations. And I wondered if anyone else out there felt like me. I was doing counseling twice a week and had medication, but I still felt very lonely and isolated. So I actually posted this Google survey. And over the years, over 406 respondents have shared that they felt, 30% felt comfortable sharing their rape with no one. And over 74% reported their symptoms to be ongoing, which means until we can get help for our trauma, we can live with this indefinitely. And this actually made me feel like I needed to act and like I wasn't alone. And if anyone else is interested in starting something, I really encourage you to start a survey, start an interest list, because that will help you gauge what people need. And it actually helps you. Someone wise once told me that if you don't have data, you're just another opinion. So having these data points really helped me prove to volunteers and to donors that this is a needed service. Thank you. Next slide. So I went from launching, I started doing Sunlight Retreats, which is Sunlight Retreats Foundation. It's a nonprofit out of California. I've done 3 retreats and 3 workshops, co-ed workshops. And these are overnight women-only retreats. They're 4-day events where we study the science of trauma. And they have been so powerful, and people have said that it has changed their life. But I know I needed to do more because more people were coming for help, and I needed to bring the science of trauma online as a way to scale. And this was pitched prior to COVID. And next slide, we'll share a little bit about the building blocks of trauma. So even though, I might suffer from sexual trauma, I'm also married to an active duty service member who has combat trauma. He's deployed 3 times. He does explosive ordnance bomb disposal. And our brain chemistry and our brain responses are actually the same. So even though we identify differently, our brains are processing it the same way. Next slide. So the solution landscape is actually very fractured and very underfunded. And it's only gotten worse since COVID. Rehab costs $1,000 a day. My sister wanted me to go. I would have had to quit my job and go into debt to do so. Anonymous hotlines just refer you to 1,000. There's about 1,000 crisis centers nationwide. And crisis centers are challenged because they're more for the immediate aftermath of an attack, not in the ongoing aftermath, which can last years. There's self-help books, which are not interactive, counseling, but over 30% of people have lost their insurance during COVID alone. So not everyone can afford $200 to $300 out of pocket for insurance. So this is where Sunlight U really comes in. And online talk therapy has exploded, but it can cost up to $400 or $500 a month, and it's all based around cognitive behavioral therapy for the most part, and not really around trauma specialty. Next slide. So these are some of the global problems that Sunlight U will help address by just understanding the building blocks of trauma. And while I was in school, I did a support survey, next slide, about if people would even be interested. And overnight, from one Facebook post, I was able to get 579 responses, which I think that even show like the desperate need people were needing for this service. And this was back in the March timeframe. So the COVID pandemic was just starting. And I'm sure it's only gotten worse. So next slide. So here's a mock-up of Sunlight U, our interactive workbook that we are going to have with our sessions. We actually have recorded all our Sunlight U sessions with trauma specialist Dr. Shiva Guide over the summer in San Diego, in City Heights. And we are really excited to launch this spring. We are going to be focusing on, if you're curious about the science of trauma, that includes black and white thinking, cognitive distortions. There's all sorts of things that you don't really dive into in therapy that are really useful and empowering for you to know. And so we invite you to join us. If you go to our next slide at sunlightu.org, you can sign up for our interest list. And our next retreat, hoping with COVID to do in person again, potentially not this summer, but next summer, probably in San Diego or the Washington, D.C. area. If you know of any survivors who are struggling, who could use that network of fellow survivors, because it's really powerful. They're all best friends now. They know they're not alone. They have WhatsApp strings talking all day, and many of them come back as alumni to support the next class. So we're really building an empowered network of survivors all over the country, and we hope globally as well. We have a lot of interest in bringing retreats to London or Mexico, and we hope to do that in the future as well. And I'd like to end on the why, about why we do this. And I'd like you to meet Allie here on the left in the cute black hat. Allie was in a domestic violence situation. She contacted me and we had to arrange for like private cabs and everything to keep her non-identifiable to come to Sunlight. And after Sunlight, she said her entire life changed. She got out of that abusive relationship. She moved across the country. She now supports women in technology. She actually got remarried to a very nice guy and is helping with Sunlight a lot. And then there's also Nurse Michelle there. She came to Sunlight thinking she wasn't even sure if she wanted to stay on this planet. And you have to realize we aren't just survivors. We actually have real jobs in the real world. And she's a COVID nurse. She's intubating COVID patients on a daily basis. And she has saved so many lives. And she actually has branched out with Sunlight to the East Coast. So she's doing retreats in North Carolina. And if you need more immediate support, she is doing, it's called Resilient Voices in September. So we're building a network, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them in the chat. And I'd like to turn it over to my good friend, Karl. Karl and I are in a lot of the same pitch competitions, and fun fact, he always beats me. So you're in for a treat.
Thank you, Brittany, and welcome everyone. I'm excited to share my story and why I started my company. Next slide, please. Which is called HUGS. It stands for Housing Undergraduate and Graduate Students. And what we want to do is be the future of housing for international students in the US. Next slide, please. So when I moved to the US in 2019, as an international student, I found it was pretty difficult to find housing. And the problem was that when an international student moves to the US, you move without what's called a social security number, which is used to get your credit score. So a landlord can use a credit score to either grant you housing or not, but international students don't have that. And I thought of the problem and reached out to a few international student friends of mine who had also recently moved, and they were all having the same issue. Next slide, please. So what I decided to do is look into all the factors that prevented us from getting housing, and the main one was credit. So what a few friends and I decided to do is see what the US government used to grant us our visas and actually assess our credit before moving here, and then translate that in what we call a HUG score. So, a HUG score is our own version of a credit score that takes into account what international students use to move to the US in the first place. We turn that into a score by applying a lot of math, and then turns into a credit score that landlords can use to grant international students housing or not. So with that, we've seen a lot of progress and a lot of success in people actually being granted housing at places that previously they could not. And it's helped me and it's helped my friends, and we hope to keep helping others along the way. Next slide, please. So the way we use that score is through our own platform. You can visit us at hugsinternational.com. We're going to launch soon. But essentially, an international student just goes to the web page, creates a profile, uploads their documents so we can calculate their HUG score, and then they can just look for housing on our platform. And this is how it's done now, but we want to grow to a point where any landlord can use our score to rate an international student, and that way we prevent the problem of in a student moving to a new country. So preparing your application for a year, moving to a new country, starting your classes, and still not knowing where you're going to live. So that's what we want to avoid to keep happening to others, and actually change the system in that way. Next slide, please. So a few of our competitions or existing solutions, international students typically use, they go to their universities, which typically, it's easy because they don't have ask you for a score or anything, but there's typically a very low amount of space. So most students actually can't go on the university campus. And then we have Craigslist or social media where students get scammed, and there are weird things happening, and it's kind of daunting to use. There's also other real estate sites like Zillow, if you know, where you can look for housing, but it's still the same issue. And they ask for a score. Then there's word of mouth, as a friend is moving out, gives you a place, or just knows someone who's looking for a roommate. Next slide, please. Right now, we're partnering with universities and companies across the US, and hopefully soon the globe. Our first partnership is with the University of San Diego, where I go to school and graduate soon. And we're also partnering with other universities around San Diego, and then hopefully soon in California, and then the whole US. And we also partner with other companies in the space. So Prodigy Finance and Empower Financing provide loans to international students. And we're in conversations with them to see how we can best help our demographic or our target market to actually find housing, because you can do everything before moving to the US except know where you're going to live. And we think that doesn't make any sense. And Kaplan, which is a test and Manhattan Prep test taking agencies. So a lot of companies and organizations who have access to international students before they move. Next slide, please. So what we're aiming to do, and just quickly on this, is we first start with our marketplace, we call it, which is sort of like an Airbnb type website. Along the years, we want to grow the technology and, like Brittany said, have data to be able to identify and improve our processes and make housing cheaper for international students. But our long-term vision is Hug City residences, where we have dedicated housing opportunities for international students in our own buildings. So coming soon. And next slide, please. The team we have right now is a team of international students who have experienced this at some point. So I myself, Carl, am the CEO. I'm doing my MBA and I'm graduating in just a few weeks, which is kind of scary. And there's Bria, who's from Canada. She's also in my cohort or in my class, and she's our chief marketing officer. And we have Akash, who is our CTO right now. And we're all having fun developing this platform. Slide, please. Well, I want to thank you again for listening to me. What we want to do is really lessen the burden of international students, and also give them just one less thing to worry about when they move to a whole new country for school. So I'll hand it off to Jarvis, who has also participated in a few pitch competitions with us, and we just have a fun time. Take it away, Jarvis.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Jarvis, and like Carl and Brittany before me, I also competed in the Flower Global Social Innovation Challenge with my good friend Kyla and Riley, who unfortunately cannot be here today. Next slide, please. Next slide again. Sorry. I'm an embedded software student at the University of San Diego, and about 2 years ago, I started a renewable energy project that is more so in the electrical engineering major. Feels like an odd choice. Let me explain. Next slide, please. The project was created because of the problem we had with renewable energy. In the graph that you're seeing right now shows how much energy is being generated from power plants provided by the California Independent Service Operator. We can see that the demand for energy near peaks around 8 p.m. is relatively the same throughout the years from 2013 all the way to 2020. And I would imagine it's about the same for this year as well. However, during the day, the amount of energy that needs to be produced in 2020 is significantly less than the amount of energy that needs to be produced in 2013. That seems to make absolutely no sense. As society and technology develop, you would think we'll be consuming more energy. However, the overall energy usage is mostly consistent, if not increasing. So why would there be a sharp decrease in the amount of energy needed during the day? This is actually due to the increased amount of solar energy being harvested in California. We're actually receiving so much energy from the sun that we have to shut off our power plants during the day, or even pay other states to take up our energy to prevent the huge inrush of energy from damaging our own power grids. This sounds like a good thing almost, but in reality, it's causing a lot of problems. The overproduction of solar energy would force grid managers to turn off power plants that are designed to run continuously for maximum efficiency. So the process of turning them off and turning them back on again will induce major overhead costs for the grid managers and decreases the efficiency that we're running the power plants off of. This is not to mention the need to switch them back on in a couple hours of notice, since the demand of energy is no longer being met by solar after the sun goes down. The grid have to double, if not triple, its energy output in 3 to 4 hours time to make sure the energy demand is met, and that is causing electricity prices in California to rise significantly. So we're left with a kind of ironic problem. The more solar energy we harvest, the more expensive our electricity will be. Next slide, please. Now, solar energy farms has already been constructed in many areas of California, and in theory, after the initial cost of constructing the solar farms, they will continuously produce limitless, free, and clean energy. However, the problem mentioned above still persists, and as a solution, our project proposal was the use of capacitors to store the excess energy for consumption later in the day. We decided to focus on capacitors because they have a significantly longer working lifespan, higher recyclability, and are more environmentally friendly in the raw material it requires. Now I want to talk a little bit about why I chose this project. Next slide, please. I thought it was important because it is always easier and cheaper to prevent something bad from happening than to fix it once it has happened. According to an article by Yale, climate change itself could cost US hundreds of billions of dollars by the year 2090. However, if we prevent climate change from getting to that stage right now through the use of renewable energy, we could have a better solution at a fraction of the cost. And another big reason is my personal fascination with energy. If we look at currency like the dollar or the pound or the Japanese yen as the medium of exchange in our human society, to me, energy is exactly that, a medium of exchange between us and the universe. Anything we want done, if we want to do anything in this universe, we have to expend energy. And to keep going with that analogy, humans have not been very good at financing. Next slide, please. With the sun providing more energy in a day than the entire world uses in 1 year, money is literally raining from the sky and we're just letting it pour on concrete. Being able to use that energy will be an important step in the advancement of the human society that we're living in. Next slide, please. Now that's enough about me. What about you? I chose to work on this project because I love engineering and I find energy to be very interesting to me. So working on this project itself is a very enjoyable process, even when sometimes things aren't going so well. What type of work could provide that kind of experience to you is something only you can decide for yourself. Maybe it is in the field of healthcare, or business, or maybe you got a better solution to the problem I just mentioned, and I will encourage you to pursue it. But regardless, I believe it's best to try and engage with your passion right now as a student. You have a lot less stress from other areas of life. If the project's not going so well, it doesn't mean that you won't be able to put food on the table tomorrow. And after working on your own project, it could give you a much better idea of what you want to do in the future. As great as education can be at school, there's a lot of areas where it lacks. This is especially true for giving you an idea of what work is like in the industry. The problem we face with classes is that classes are so well designed with their specific question that have a set of predetermined answers. It is great for introducing concepts and transmission of knowledge, but is very limited in exploring different solutions to problems. And the issue you encounter during your projects would basically always have many different ways you can approach it. Having that experience early will certainly be beneficial in training the way you think and give you a much better idea of what you want to do in the future. Another experience that will be incredibly beneficial to have early is to fail early. Turning your idea into reality is tough, and you will face significant amount of criticism along the way. But that's a good thing. It will be tough, but it is some of the most beneficial aspects of an experience like this. And of course, during your student time, the criticism will most likely be heavily sugar-coated anyways, so it would be much easier pill to swallow. But criticism provides critical perspectives from other viewpoints that is very crucial to your personal development and to the development of your project or idea. Getting comfortable with that failure and criticism and still having the courage to push on is what I believe is going to be one of the most important lessons that you will be able to learn from an experience like this. Another interesting thing is that having a project actually makes you happier. The personal responsibility and accountability that it gives you will give you a sense of purpose. And with it, it comes fulfillment and enjoyment. Next slide, please. According to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the last of our needs, and also one of the most important ones, is self-actualization, the desire to become the most that one can be. Right? Now, I desire to be the most that. Now, I think that most of us are still kind of in the esteem and belonging kind of phase, as we're still in school and we're still trying to figure out our place in the society, and searching for work to increase our status or looking for acceptance from society around us is something that we might be focused on, and we might overlook the importance of meaningful work. However, one of these days, maybe tomorrow, maybe 20 years from now, but one of these days, we will reach a point where we are searching for more than just accomplishments. We're searching for more than just status, respect from other people, recognition, and freedom and all that. We will be looking for purpose. Now, three of the oldest questions in philosophy is, who am I? Why am I here? And where am I going? Right? And all of them ties into the purpose question. Right? No one has been able to give a good answer to those in the last 2,000 years or 5,000 years. And I'm certainly not qualified to tell you what your purpose is. But one thing I can tell you is that the sense of purpose that can be found in the work that you find will be meaningful and will be impactful. Next slide, please. So to summarize, I chose this project because it was meaningful to me and it was enjoyable. What project will be meaningful to you? Well, that will be up for you to decide. But regardless what it is, I will say, just do it.
Thank you so much, Jarvis, Karl, and Brittany, for speaking about your identity, your experiences, and the solutions that you've created to these pressing social and environmental issues. And while they are extraordinary people, I can say that for a fact, they're not any different than you and I, right? So I challenge you to think about what makes up your identity, what makes that identity connected to a larger community, and what are the needs, present resource gaps that community has. I invite you to start thinking about that, and I also encourage you to start thinking that you have what it takes to start. As we've seen today, it doesn't take a certain type of person or a certain background to make a meaningful, innovative solution. So we call on you to start wherever that may be. Start reflecting on your identity. Start learning about the needs of communities that you may be connected to. Start working towards solutions, because that's how you start your story of innovation. Thank you so much for coming to listen to the 3 stories of innovation: the survivor, the hustler, and the engineer. And we do have some time for some extra questions if you guys would like. I will go out of this so you guys can see. And feel free to pop in the chat any comments, questions you have for our speakers today.
I was so impressed with everyone joining us from all over the world. We had Brazil, Indonesia, Turkey, Mexico. Thank you guys so much. What an honor. Is there any questions we can answer for you? Please feel free to put them in the chat.
I think we have one. How do you weigh long-term goals against short-term deadlines? Any tips for students on how weighing pros and cons with opportunities and having the confidence to say yes or no? And like balancing basically opportunities in your time.
I think that's a really good point. Just since I'm not on mute, I'll share. I try to not do in-person meetings anymore. It's been a huge, and that's helped with COVID, right? So the time to get in the car, go physically. I try to start on email and keep expectations shorter and then expand as we can build out. Because otherwise you can spend a lot of time just responding to emails and whatnot. And I try to focus on programming. So I'll turn that over to anyone else.
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. It's a very realistic one, because if we just say, "Oh, go chase your dreams, go do what you can," it's not always realistic to say that. You have your classes, you have your other responsibilities that you have to tend to. But to be honest, I think the answer to that question, I would say, is what you see on the background of Chelsea, where it says you must do what the other 95% will not. If you want to be something, if you want to be more than what the 95% will be, you have to be able to make some meaningful sacrifices. It could be in your entertainment, it could be in your social life, and you have to weigh the pros and cons between whether it's worth it or not. But I think having that meaningful work and finding that purpose in life is going to be worth it.
Yeah, I agree with Jarvis and Brittany. And what I want to add is my own experience with this. So I do two things. First, I break things down in what they essentially are. So I remove all the fluff so I know exactly what I need to do and how it needs to be done, how it needs to be addressed. And I also assess the opportunity cost. So it means, what would I be losing if I didn't do something? Because sometimes I may have, a class that's scheduled at the same time as a meeting with an investor. Which one would which would cost you more not to do? So I go based on that, and it helps me a lot.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think we have two more. Yes, we will be able to share the slides. And what do you do when you realize your venture requires a skill set you might not fully develop or even have?
I say just start. There's no, you kind of figure it out as you go. I'm medium intelligence at best, so you can figure it out. It's much easier to practice than study. Even as I'm studying social innovation, which has helped me hugely, it doesn't prepare you for having to figure out Google waivers versus DocuSign. You just have to start. That's my input.
I also would like to speak to that of a lot of what they're doing doesn't have a blueprint, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to have skill sets that they don't even know that they need until they need it. And a lot of times they're doing something that someone else hasn't done. So they're not going to have to be required to do things that other people haven't done. And so like Brittany was saying, one, start. And so then you can figure out, oh, I need to do this. And two, like use a network of people, right? Like no one's ever asking you to be a jack of all trades, know everything. All four of us, right? We definitely have gaps. And that's why it's really important to ask for help, learn from people, get mentors who may have some experience around it, and then practice with that. So that's my answer in the fact of no one has a fully developed skill set, no matter what they say. And just try to network with people who are willing to try, not even fully do it, but willing for people who are trying to work with you.
Yep. And also I would say go and find the skill. Recruit someone, recruit a friend. The person you least think will be interested in your venture and have the skill set for it.
Yeah, I think Chelsea covered most of what I want to say. Chelsea's stealing my thunder. But yeah, I definitely agree with her a lot. And I mean, the project that I'm doing is electrical engineering. And I'm from computer science background. I write the codes, not the wires. So but the thing I've learned through my project is that when it's something that you really care about and you something that you're passionate about, it doesn't matter if it's a skill set that you don't have. You will find ways to be able to conquer that, whether it's through recording your friends or talking with people or just doing the learning yourself online. There's resources out there that if you're passionate enough, you will always see an out.
And YouTube is your friend. Learning manuals is your friend. There's literally not. I mean, your unique idea will be you, but you can find help to build out all the things you might be lacking. Like, I'm not great at marketing or I'm not good at sales. You can get help for that. As Chelsea said, mentors, YouTube, whatever you're comfortable with.
Feel free to drop another question in the chat. I know we're coming up on time, but if you want to drop another one in the chat, you guys have probably a minute for any closing, like call to action for them to reach out to you or anything that you guys want to speak to.
Absolutely. And if anyone would like to share their idea or their venture, always happy to give feedback. And I think we all dropped our emails in the chat. So please copy and paste that or write that down and reach out to us afterwards.
I think we'll all be more than happy to help you with your venture. If you have an idea you want to run by us, or if you're stuck on something that you want our advice on, what to do next and whatnot, I think we'll be more than happy to help out.
Yeah, and just for further conversation, if you just want a second opinion about something, or maybe you're thinking of venture that's in the space that we are currently in, also happy to help and connect. Also, if you use LinkedIn or any other social media, on top of email, you can reach out and connect to us.
And what's the beauty of this is, even though like Brittany, Jarvis, Karl all had very different solutions, right? As we can see, there's still similar skill sets that were needed, such as the ability to give a really good pitch in a short amount of time, the ability to give like a pitch deck, right? The ability to create buy-in from investors, the ability to public speak, right? And like problem solve on the spot, or like get people involved that may not have been initially involved. So what's nice about this is when we talk about like mentors and reaching out, and oh my gosh, please feel free to reach out, is they may not have your exact innovation, right? But they still have a very similar skill set within that field that everyone's going to need to know how to create buy-in. Everyone's going to need to know how to talk about their idea. So that's similar across the board, regardless of what the innovation you're working with is. And I also want to hone back on our original idea of like, there's a very easy way to say that like, oh, well, I'm not an inventor, right? That's not me. Oh, I'm not a numbers person. And again, as today we've shown that it doesn't take a specific person to work on an innovative solution. Actually, it requires a diversity of people to address diverse solutions. So that's what we also call on you guys today, to reach out, right? To start and hone in on what makes you you and your identity, to start working on your innovative solution.
And I echo that and encourage you to talk about it too. I could point to my failures, and the failures are from when I kept it in, when I didn't share and bounce off feedback. You don't have to worry about stealing in your idea, because it's actually all about the execution. That's the really, really hard part. That, if you have a novel idea, that's great. You want to bounce that off as many people that you think will offer you helpful feedback as possible.
Oh, and to kind of second what Brittany just said, it's all about execution. Like, a lot of people seem to have this kind of conception that it's 80% the idea. Once you get the idea, oh, you're mostly there. It's actually not quite that. It's not even 20% the idea. It is really just about execution, how you approach the different problems. Because there's going to take a tremendous amount of craftsmanship, perseverance, and determinants to actually turn one idea into a reality. And you will encounter significant amount of roadblocks along the way. But that is just part of the journey, and that is actually going to be the most enjoyable part once you look back upon it. That's the part that you learn the most. So keep an open mind to it, and definitely don't get discouraged about it.
Yeah, I have a question for the group. If nobody wants to drop another question, what was like a major obstacle for you guys, and how did you get past that?
Oh, I have a good one. Legal support. So I have a very high risk business model where anyone can contact me. It's overnight retreats. There's a lot of mental and physical barriers that someone might need extra assistance. And I couldn't find a volunteer lawyer to help me launch Sunlight Retreats. So I did it anyway. And I cribbed other people's waivers and I compiled it and I ran it through a 30-day free trial of LegalZoom and I launched because it's very easy to make excuses when you don't want to launch and you just have to do it and figure out a way. And once you get to a certain point you get out the door, people start to buy in. And that buy-in slope increases over time. So I know it can be discouraging at first, but I could probably get 10 lawyers now to help me if I needed to.
That's fantastic. That's very creative.
Yeah, and one challenge that I had was along the lines of Brittany was also with finding someone to do something. So I started developing the website, last summer. But I'm not a coder. I'm not a developer. I just needed to get something started so I can show, right? And it takes me a lot of time. So in that, I needed someone to dedicate their time to continue developing the platform. So that's why I had to look for and find the CTO, right? So doing it was starting was the upward slope, like Brittany said, and getting that buy-in and explaining why they should run a startup that's probably not going to be paying much for a while, et cetera, et cetera. But after that happened, we actually started recruiting 4 more engineers. Just out of nowhere, people were just reaching out. Oh, hey, I saw, you have a CTO now. Do you have another position? We have someone interested in this. And they just kept coming and coming. And I had to, at the end of it, say, okay, wait, I can't handle this many people. Reach out in 3 months. So going from, hey, I can't find someone to, okay, now too many people. It just came from me not making the excuse of, wow, I can't code, so, my idea won't happen. It's all in the execution.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. The starting part is very, very difficult. I kind of had the idea for the project back in like sophomore year, and I had no idea how to take it forward. I don't know who to talk to. I don't have anybody to help me. And it's just kind of an idea that I had in my mind. And I don't know if it's going to work since my solution is kind of a little bit more technical. And I just didn't know how to proceed. But so the first thing that I did was I reached out to the different professors because I know that it's going to be the easiest way to get some feedback on it, and they will always want to help you. So I started talking to every single professor that I could find in the physics department, in the engineering department, just pitching them ideas. And I did get turned down quite a few times, and it was quite discouraging at first. But after a while, you kind of get a flow of what your idea is missing, what you need to do to improve it. And then afterwards, okay, I think I have an idea kind of formulated. Then it's much easier to move forward with that. Once I have the idea kind of figured out, we know where we're going, what the project is, what the market is, what it's trying to solve, all that. Then I was able to take that idea. I went to different clubs and organizations, and I asked the organizers if I can, hey, maybe do a shameless self-plug here and talk about my project and see if anybody's going to be interested. So I did that at a couple of different organizations, and because I spent a lot of time, I spent basically the entire year working with the different professors, kind of formulating the technical aspects behind the project. I was able to get Kyla and Riley, my good friends, to join me on the venture and actually go to the pitch competition together. So getting the start is going to be very difficult. I was talking to 5 professors at the same time, and they were all saying, your idea is just not going to work, right? The technical aspect is just very lacking. But being able to take that criticism and being able to see if there's going to be another angle that you can approach it to change that project, I think is going to be the most important, and is going to be incredibly useful later on in your life as well.